Hey, it's Hacking TV time again, folks. This week, more video programming, this time from Fullscreen, and yes, from Apple.
The rapid rise of Facebook Live video, plus what happens when you have a wireless service that's data and no voice.
And a troubled trip back in the time machine to 2005. Did On the Media's Bob Garfield really predict the future?
And if so, is Garfield's chaos scenario now in full effect?
I'm Steve Rosenbaum.
And I'm Saul Hansel. And this is Hacking
TV. I like the stereo thing. It makes us seem like we're like on Shark Tank or something.
No doubt.
Welcome, Saul. Howdy, howdy.
Howdy to all of our many viewers and listeners across as many media distribution channels as we can find.
So we're gonna move quickly through the news section because we have a 15-minute chunk to debate the hot tub time machine that is Bob Garfield coming up at the quarter hour. So let's just jump right in and talk about the news. What do you make of this full screen thing?
Well, look, we're still in a place where people are trying to figure out what kind of made-for-the-web content can be professionally made. This has been something that mostly has been a flop, except for the bottoms-up stuff that's on YouTube. But, you know, since people are watching more and more short videos, it's stupid not to try.
All right, but just let me get right to the pointy part of the stick that I have on this. Isn't this just Vessel?
Well, but isn't CBS just NBC, right?
Fair enough.
The point isn't that somebody's going to make video. The point is some of the people who are going to make video are going to figure out what's popular and economically sustainable.
Okay.
So just to back up the news, so Fullscreen is owned by AT&T and Peter Chernin, and they've been playing around with stuff, and they announced that they're going to come in with a $5 a month subscription service aimed, guess what, at millennials. If you were under 35, boy, you're feeling loved right now. And they're going to have scripted shows like Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, and
my personal favorite.
Yes, and talk shows. You know, basically they've hired a lot of YouTube talent and are going to produce them up and see what happens and see if people are going to pay them for it.
But here's what I don't get. So first of all, with the caveat being that I think Chernin is a super smart guy, he says kind of casually when he's asked about this thing, well, we made it work with Crunchyroll. And I scratch my head because I'm like, Crunchyroll is a 7-year-old business focused on an enormously loyal anime audience that tends to be a credit card wielding audience, not under the age of 18, but 20-somethings to 30-something anime fans. I just don't see how, if you're 16 years old, you say, hey mom, hey dad, listen, there's this new thing called Fullscreen and it costs $4.99 a month. Can I have your credit card? I don't see that happening over the dinner table.
Right. So people, loosely speaking, aren't going to buy a variety show. I think this is one of the big mistakes all these guys are making, and Crunchyroll is the opposite. It's a thing, right? It's got lots of stuff on it, but it's about anime, right? And so if I came to you and said, I've got this great cooking channel that you pay $5 a month for, and I stole all the best people from, the Food Network or from who do cooking stuff on YouTube, people will know whether they should think about whether to buy that or not.
Okay, let's do this. I'll agree. Truce. Let's wait and see if it works, because the Apple thing, I'm much more interested in poking holes in. It'll be way more fun.
Right. I mean, and also, just $5 a month, if they came up with one series you loved, you might pay $5 a month for that.
Again, if I could get mom and dad to pay for it, yes. Okay.
Yeah, well,
but you're excited. But you're excited about this Apple TV thing. You're excited about.
So, if you read the story,
the New York Times story about Apple's first foray into original TV.
Yeah, Ben Silverman, a longtime TV producer who knows Eddie Q, who runs, their iTunes and a bunch of other things there, says, I have this great idea for a series about apps. Don't you guys want to produce it? And they say, well, we're not really in the video production business other than a couple of concerts here and there, but what the hell? And they agree to fund a unspecified show that has something to do with apps, and we don't know much anything else.
So Ben Silverman, in the spirit of full disclosure, Ben was my agent back in the day at William Morris, and H.T. Owens, and is going back to work with Ben on this. And these are good guys. Both of them have terrific track records and successes. So they've picked the right team. The Apple folks have. That being said, I have a deep-seated feeling that Apple's secret feeling about video is meh.
About all of video, movies, TV shows, cable, the whole thing?
I think Jobs imbued the place with the things that he loved, and music was something he loved, and design was something he loved, and calligraphy was something he loved, and video, he was always meh.
Except for the fact that, he owned and built, a great movie studio.
Movie studio is different than video, though.
Well, movies used to be different than video. It isn't anymore.
In any case, we're moving out.
Everything's digital. Everything's the same.
Let's move to chapter 2 because chapter 2.
Let's just walk through for 1 second. We think that they're going to produce this thing. It has good people, so it might be good. And where does that leave Apple?
I just think that I don't use my Apple TV to look for new things. I use my Apple TV to watch movies I already know about. And I'm wrestling with Apple Music now because more and more things are behind their firewall and they keep asking me to pay for it, and I'm used to getting radio for free. So I think in order to have people think of you as a place to sample new things, you need to go all in on the new things business. And I think that Netflix has, and I think Amazon has.
Well, that's the question about whether they go all in is an interesting question. I mean, there's a long history going back to John Malone of people in distribution thinking that they have an advantage in content. And clearly, if you stuck John Malone at Apple, he would commission a lot of programming and use the distribution monopoly or, oligopoly to sell it. So it's there to be done. And so the question does go back to what you're saying is, how much do they want to do this? Since they do make a fair bit of money distributing movies on behalf of media companies, do they want to compete with their suppliers? Probably. But it's interesting. I mean, the last thing I'll say is what surprises me here is Apple is just not a company that says, let's throw a lot of things out against the wall and see what sticks. Apple is a very deliberate company that when they do things, they tend to do them reasonably big and reasonably polished. So it is very uncharacteristic of them to go try a one-off like this. But we will see.
So chapter 2, a whole lot of people that you and I both know and respect are expanding their footprint into different flavors of live video and doing it longer, in a bunch of ways. So where do we want to start?
Facebook is far and away the most important player in this because of its scale. And again, I'm doing some work for Facebook, but I have not talked to anybody in their video business. I did spend a bunch of time reading Mark's public transcripts on this, and Mark is said to be particularly hot on Facebook Live. And as I've thought about it, I need to make to our audience a little bit of a retraction. I have been very skeptical in the last several podcasts about Facebook Live.
Hold on. If you're gonna eat a full sampling of crow here, let me serve it up in a dish for you.
Okay.
You've been cynical for the last 6 or 7 months about live in general.
And the reason I have been cynical about live, which I still believe are basic
so much,
is that most people don't watch video live; they want it on demand. But there's a counter argument, several counter arguments, right? So if you're Facebook, right, and again, no one there has said this to me, but right, they know that the biggest pot of dollars they can get is TV commercial dollars. They know that a gazillion people are already watching video on their thing, and they're saying, how do we compete with YouTube? And you look at what's been successful on YouTube. Here's what's not been successful. Anybody's scripted anything. Here's what has been successful. People recording stuff as if it was live, talking into the camera, where they have distinctive personalities. And so you're Facebook and you say, all right, we create a format that's different a little bit than YouTube, that encourages that kind of, fisheye lens view of looking at the camera. It's also conducive to lots of family sharing, right? You put your birthday party up and all that stuff. And because Facebook reaches everybody, we're going to put our thumb on the scale, Don Malone and send people these alerts that say, Steve Rosenbaum is on live now. And guess what? We have jump-started a whole nother stream of programming that's indigenous to the culture today that can, one-up YouTube.
I think it's less about putting your finger on the scale. I think that what they're doing is people hang out on Facebook. People communicate on Facebook. Messenger happens in real time. When you comment on something, you get a notification. Other people have commented on it. So it really feels more like a place that you're in for chunks of time as opposed to YouTube, which is a place you search or a show you watch. And I think, I will just tell you as a consumer, live is fun. I like making it. I like people communicating with me in it. I like consuming it. It feels good. So, more power to them.
So they're onto something. Nick Ashheim, who I'm sure you know, who was at the New York Times and a bunch of other places, now runs digital for NBC News, sent out, I think, a Facebook post this morning that one of their producers was doing live backstage with Meet the Press or something like this. And I went and it wasn't live. It was on demand, which is still how most people are watching these things. But you're sort of, because they're acting like it's live, they're recording it live, it still has a little bit of that live-ish feel. That's just marketing sizzle. But I got annoyed. It was some woman doing a 20-minute selfie, holding her iPhone at arm's length. I could put up with that. And she was wandering around backstage, and it wasn't edited. It wasn't scripted. And so it was flabby. It was boring. And yes, it was authentic. That's why I think it's going to be a hit. But I also think it's going to burn out a little bit, right? Because people have limited attention spans.
Well, but good for NBC for trying, right? Good for
sure. Everybody.
Good for Nick.
If someone's doing a talk show on it. I mean, again, the thing you have to realize about Facebook is it's so much bigger than everybody else. When you go look at the numbers, right? More people on the planet spend more time with Facebook than they spend doing anything else by a long shot. Okay, in terms of by time spent, Facebook laps Google, including YouTube. By reach, Google is a little bigger, but Facebook, as you say, people are in it, and so they have a power, and maybe it's not thumb on the scale power, but it's the platform, right, that people are playing, that is important, and so whatever they do around video is going to get a lot of people to play with it.
So Snapchat's, you and I think Snapchat's new features that came out this week are meaningfully earth-shattering in some really interesting ways. So Snapchat's secret, other than the fact that they told Facebook that they weren't taking their $2 billion, has been that it's been a thing that you couldn't figure out if you were an adult. It was meant to be a place where young people hang out that their parents can't go. It's hard to figure out. There's not a lot of, there's lots of Easter eggs buried in the thing, but friends tell each other. And so for those of us who were trying to get at it from the outside, it was impenetrable.
Uh-huh.
This is the first time that they've done a big new release of features in which they actually released a tutorial and said, here's how it works, parents.
So is that the beginning of the end? Have they jumped the shark now that they're not totally inscrutable?
They jumped the shark in the same way that Facebook went from being something you could only sign up for with a college address to, oh yeah, now you don't need it. Like everyone does the same thing. Disney stars become pop stars, become adult. All of these things have kind of a rise to mass popularity if they succeed. And I think Snapchat adding voice and video chat in real time makes it more of a communications tool and less of the secret thing that you keep, that parents can't see. And I'm using it more. I'm experimenting with it more. I'm still a little trepidatious about it. It's not easy yet.
Have you made a video call to somebody on it?
I have.
And how is it any different than FaceTime or Skype or any other such way of making a video call?
The answer is I don't use FaceTime or Skype in that way.
And would you, other than playing around with a new thing, was there something about video chatting on Snapchat
that felt fun?
That felt more,
Jury's still out. Out.
I mean, I think that it's important. And, one of the things you do with a startup, right, is you do one thing in a way to get noticed, then you expand. Facebook certainly has done that very well, as has Google. Twitter has not. Snapchat, I think, is really interesting because they expanded not to anything adjacent. They went from being, private teenager communication to a video distribution system, and now they're going back and adding a little more communication, right? But and they have such momentum and loyalty, and they have, what in the Facebook world you would have called the friend graph, right? If they've got several 100 million people, and all the kids in my daughter's junior high school, they can make Facebook Messenger and Instagram messaging and WhatsApp sweat a little bit. I want to take a minute before we go to the big apocalyptic story. There was a footnote in the article that you found on the Snapchat thing that I thought was at least as interesting. So the premise is, the headline of this article was, phone companies are sweating because the more people use apps to communicate, the less they pay for voice calls. I think that's a 3-year-old story because FaceTime already does that, and Skype, and so the phone companies already went to unlimited voice and unlimited text. But what's interesting is they're giving up even the pretense. So T-Mobile just came out with a set of plans that's just data bandwidth. Bring your own messaging app. Don't use our phone network. And I think that's an important sign.
So can I ask just a blunt question? Have you ever used do you know anyone that uses T-Mobile? I want them not to suck. They're so aggressive and they're so trying to, dent the universe. I want them not to suck. And I walk by a T-Mobile store on my way home from work every day. And every time I walk by, I think, if I were a braver guy, I would tell my AT&T service to go shove off. And I would be one of those people that would take the leap into T-Mobile. But I just have this sinking feeling that the service wouldn't hold up. So tell me I'm wrong, and maybe I'll be a guinea pig.
No, it's a company that is, substituting marketing and discounting for capital investment. I mean, that said, you read your ads, they say they've built out their LTE footprint, blah, 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 but, until somebody tells me otherwise, I'm with you. And so, but they are just potent enough to prick the big guys a little bit, but not completely. I'm finally got around to switching my FiOS service, and they basically wouldn't let me get rid of my voice line, and they discounted it enough so that it essentially didn't matter on the price. Although there's like $7 a month extra of taxes and crap. I mean, the bureaucracy of phone lines. So it's we're getting to a point. The FCC actually is on top of this. That there's a regulatory and tax problem when everybody stops using, telephones, but we can see it coming. And with that kind of chaos, as the phone system collapses, we are going to talk about the entire destruction of the world as we know it. And something that's been happening got you thinking about Bob Garfield's book from 2005? And why don't you walk through what about the chaos scenario is resonating with you right now?
So, first of all, the fact that he wrote the chaos scenario in 2005 is disturbing on its face because it's now so long ago. But I remember this article. I remember the cover story on Ad Age, and I remember being, stunned by it on a number of levels. First of all, Garfield's very smart. He's cynical and biting and funny and acerbic, and he had written what turned out to be this series of articles that then became a book in which he looked into the future and talked about what the media business was going to look like in 2020. So this is now 11 years ago, and I'm actually quoted a couple of places in the article as saying things that are relatively coherent. You can read it for yourself. But what he essentially said was that if all of the existing things that hold up the media business fail, ramp down, and the new economy doesn't yet exist for media, what happens to all of these businesses? And when you read the 2005 article with 2016 goggles on, it's clear that he was, mostly right. And the place we're standing now is almost exactly where he said we'd be.
In what way? So how would you describe the attributes of the chaos scenario that we are living among?
So his thesis was that in a that the CPM world was based on mass media, that you're buying people in dollops of thousands, and that the only way that you can get to enough money to fund a media business is if you're delivering hundreds of thousands or more likely millions of audience members in a dollop. And that when you keep adding more content into the system, more blogs, more podcasts, more websites, more television channels, more services, what happens is the same finite set of dollars get spread among smaller and smaller granular pieces. And effectively, if you're not, unless you're willing to pay $300 per thousand or $500 per thousand or $1 million, some bigger number, if you're still looking at the audience as this mass media commodity, then the only thing that kind of puts a finger in the hole in the boat is native advertising, content marketing, essentially media companies selling their soul to brands to say, yeah, we'll bring you inside the tent and let you make stuff that will be ads, but we'll call it content.
He has a grand scenario, and I read it, and there was a bunch of stuff that, exactly as you said, seemed very prescient. I think that the consequences of this change in the supply-demand equation for content broadly are playing out. I think where I would disagree with him is his assessment of sort of how quickly things, new business models would come in to replace the old ones. He basically had this describing this sort of end of quality, end of marketing, everything, he had the forces of destruction. But I think that in retrospect, you can see he missed some of the construction. For example, as of 2005, he was talking a lot about the Napster, peer-to-peer structure and DRM battles and a bunch of things. And he didn't describe, because it hadn't really happened, the eventual success of streaming music. So look at the music business today. The International Record Industry just came out with some statistics that I think are important. So for the first time, streaming is the single biggest category of revenue for music, edging out downloads. And yes, there are still some CDs and, a growing small amount of vinyl. But the dominant thing is streaming. That's a successful new business model. But, big but, the overall revenue is half of what it was at the peak. So yes, there's a business, but more people are splitting less money. So is that entirely chaos? Partially chaos, but there is an equilibrium forming. I don't know if,
but at the same time, iHeartMedia, the former Clear Channel, is on the verge of bankruptcy.
Oh, they're on the verge of bankruptcy because they borrowed too much money when,
but radio as we know it, I mean,
right, radio will go away, but digital radio is very popular. I mean, if you look at time spent.
So hold on, let's go through the list. Radio will go away. What about newspapers? Yes or no? Come on, 20 questions. Newspapers go away.
Radios over antennas will go away.
Okay.
Newspapers on paper may go away.
Magazines on paper.
Right. So, but that doesn't mean, right?
But what I'm saying is, if you look at the way advertising works on the web and you look at how it works on mobile, there's a newspaper or a magazine has all these pages where you can put ads. A television show has all these places you can put ads. Then you put it in a little, in this little phone thing, and all of a sudden the volume of inventory goes down as the number of content sources go up. And what you get, and the result is you get more content, less ad placement, not even, let's put aside.
So if the thesis is the shift from physical to digital media is going to change all these equilibrium that made for steady state businesses, network television, metropolitan newspapers, right, that grew to be a balance of consumer demand and production cost and monetization. All of that is going to change, right? So you can describe a chaos scenario and saying all the media marketplaces are going to change in their fundamental factors. No question. I don't think that's revolutionary. But I don't go from that to everything is bad, right?
Oh, no, I'm not. Look,
but for example, he makes the assertion that this is going to undercut quality television. Most people would say there's more quality television today than any time in the history of the planet. You've got a Netflix as a profitable business making content investments. You have Hulu as a business that has a hybrid fee and advertising model like cable. But as you in a world of competition, they can't have the ad loads that people had. So maybe it's good.
So thanks to you, I've been turned on to the podcast Startup.
Yep.
And part of what makes it fascinating is that they talk with relative transparency about the economics of the business, about how much money they've raised, $5 million on top of their seed round, about how they're selling ads on their podcasts, about how they're trying to figure out a Gimlet content studio so they can work with brands. And you hear them, it's like you can see the cliff that they're aiming toward, because brands are saying to them, we would love to have Gimlet endorse our commercial property, our bank, our real estate company with the Gimlet quality brand. And the Gimlet folks are pushing back, saying, no, we want to produce things for you that won't be Gimlet branded, that won't be pushed through the Gimlet network. And I haven't gotten to the end of the series, so maybe there's a happy ending, you tell me. But it seems to me that net, the thing about podcasting that makes it so prescient and scary, he says while on a podcast, is you're talking about smaller audiences with lower production values reaching less people and generating less revenue.
Right. So are we all going to, get to be Bill Paley, running CBS as the Tiffany network in the 1960s? No, maybe nobody will, although, Reed Hastings is close, and Jeff Bewkes running HBO has a certain amount of clout there. But, right, yes, there are local equilibria. What I like about podcasting, which I think is what's working in digital media, is it's an attempt to find a balance. So the interesting thing about podcasting is it's a broadcast medium. It may compete. It can certainly compete with radio, and it may compete a little bit with TV. But it costs more to make than text, but a lot less than video, just because you have microphones and you don't have cameras. And you don't have to edit the same way, and you can do stuff live in ways that make sense. And so people are playing around with, can we make stuff that people like, that entertain and inform at a quality level and a scale level that works? And we do by not spending any money and having our audience optimistically put in the thousands. And Gimlet has an audience in the hundreds of thousands, and may or may not. There's something that they can do.
But let's remember, hundreds of thousands in the media world that you and I grew up in is small market radio.
There were lots of magazines that were around for decades.
Okay.
With circulations of hundreds of thousands, but they got a mix of advertising and circulation revenue. And
but two things: people paid for the magazine to be,
yes,
which no one's paying for Gimlet, and the hypocrisy of the difference between media and magazines is people always paid for magazines for quality. Advertisers wanted to be inside the glossy paper. They wanted to be around that environment. They wanted to be speaking to those readers, and that's never moved over to digital media or electronic.
Oh, sure. I mean, Quartz is making a fortune on that. That's from the Atlantic, which is one of those magazines that on a good year had hundreds of thousands of subscribers, has taken the premium model and moved it online very successfully. My
memory is that there's been drama there, but I wouldn't want to.
Of course, there's been drama. This again. Yeah. To say that is there drama? Yes.
I believe Bob called it chaos.
But chaos.
Anyway, in any case, drama, chaos, call it what you will. Tumult, as my grandmother would have said.
As they said, this changes everything. Changing everything causes tumult. But I think Bob went beyond, there's going to be a lot of change, to, in part, talk about this moment when all the things we liked about media were going to go away and the good new stuff wasn't going to be there yet. And I would argue that we live in an era where some things are going away, but there's enough good stuff that I don't think somebody who says, I've got an extra hour, I want high quality video entertainment, informational content, can't find stuff produced that gives them a satisfying experience.
All right. Wasn't there something that I just read the other day that one of the big London newspapers was getting out of the breaking news business? In any case.
Yes. And the FT was saying, what we're good at is analytical pieces. Let's go do that and not be a wire service.
And P.S., breaking news doesn't make any money, but never hearing it.
Well, breaking news doesn't make any money if you're not on top of it, if you don't have scale.
In any case, we are out of time. I think it would be fun to reach out to our friend, Mr. Garfield, and see if he'd like to be probed about the chaos theory and its relative sturdiness 11 years into its prognostication. We'll see if he's available for next week.
Sure, and no foul for him to say, guess what? I was right and wrong, and here's my revised view, right? I mean, I think that his article holds up very well in terms of a lot of the trends. I just think that things that were not obviously foreseeable happened that add good stuff to the mix.
Hack on, have an excellent week, and we will be back again next week with another edition of Hacking TV. See you
next week, guys.